So AJAX, layout, partials, and locals, and scope in JS. You're working on what, the Hacker News Challenge today, right?
AJAX tag. How many times have you done this challenge?
Oh.
Wait, it's already recorded. No, it's not.
Bigger? There we go. Okay, cool. So what do we got in this challenge? We have, looks like a Sinatra application. Okay. Cool. Waiting. Oh no, event machine didn't install correctly. What do I do? I mean, sure, but like we're not gonna like. Fine. Well, I'd probably read the error message. Is where I was gonna go. But yeah. Also bundle update event machine. God damn it. Okay.
Do gems? The more gems slow your app down, or is there a reason not to install every possible gem every time?
Yes. Sure. Absolutely. You don't want to have like gems come with dependencies and version dependencies, right? And like it's adding code to your application. With the number of gems and the type of gems that you're using now, no, they don't really slow anything down. But you can like scale sort of that up, right? You're gonna get to a place where, well, what's the matter? Oh, okay. We're just laughing about like something on Facebook. All right, cool. You can scale that up, and yeah, sure. There's definitely going to be an impact. Also, like you want to. It's the same as like we were talking the other day about. You remember the conversation we were having about like session clear, session destroy versus like session user ID equals nil, right? And like ensuring that the code that you are writing and its impact is as finely focused as possible. Right? Same with installing or with like adding gems to your gem file. If you put 37 gems in, but you only needed 3, right? Like you're just adding a lot of bulk and a lot of opportunity for like unexpected code to arise and errant situations to occur. Cool. Okay, I'm not gonna go and read the challenge. We're gonna say that the point of this challenge is to like at least the first point here is to click the little button and have the little point thing go up without the page refreshing, right? Oh, and make it red. Okay.
Very important.
Damn it. Well, okay. We'll be working out of the app.js file, and we have a controller index.rb that has the following routes. This get to slash, get to root, get to index here, which just redirects to post. So it's this, which has a single variable. Post is all the post and yields out to the index template. Post to post at ID vote. So here we have a route that will be creating a new vote on a given post object. Right? Awesome. Post equals post find by the ID, and then, okay, creating the vote with a value of 1, and then redirecting back here to the page where we can see all post again. I am recording. Okay, great. Delete to a post ID. We'll have to write some logic, apparently. Stupid challenge, make me work. And a post to post, which has a post create, title, username, and comment count, and then goes back to all the posts. And then a post show, which finds the post and then yields out to the post page. So that's like the code that we have to work with off the bat. We could go and like take a look at the index.erb file. Looks like there's a header, some stuff. They're iterating over that post variable that we sent out with a block param of post. And then, so this is like essentially the meat of the page that we're seeing right here, right? Like this correlates with each one of these entries. Yeah. After the iteration concludes, then apparently there's a form on the bottom. It's a post slash post, so this will be the form that we use for like making a new post. All right, I just like to have like a cursory glance over the code that we're going to be consuming before we get in. Any questions about any of the code that's provided? Great. So it's 217. I tell you what, how about I'd like do some stuff and talk a lot, and you can like stop me if there's anything blatantly wrong. Okay, great.
What does that have to do with 217? How's that different than
Well, because I have a stupid, I have a extremely important staff meeting to attend at 3 o'clock.
You can edit that out.
Sure, we'll edit it in post.
AJAX.
All right, there's some comments here around like what document ready is and how to get going with it. We'll disregard. So let's make a function. What is it we need to do first in JavaScript? I say rhetorically because I just told you not to talk. I don't. What the? Okay. That's a weird message. I'll share it with you. Hold on.
Please do.
I just got a number I got a text from someone that's not in my phone, and it says, "Hey, it's Martina. Here is your birth chart. Sorry, I forgot."
Just be like, oh, can you go
What the
ahead
fuck is a
I think
birth
you should
chart?
Put in your
You
social
text
security
them back,
number
like, can I
and
have that?
credit card number right now.
Oh yeah.
What's the last
Very-
credit card I used?
Is that what it is?
Like, what's my address on file?
Spammy SMS? Is that really a thing? I've never gotten a spammy SMS before because I don't give anyone my real phone number. Oh, that sucks. That is unfortunate. Damn it. Okay. So the functionality that we're looking for here is we want to click this little button, and when we click the button, we want this number to change right here. Right? So this number represents what? It represents the total points on, seriously? Fuck off. On the thing. Like on the post object. So probably the first order of business is, right, in order to AJAXify this site, like currently you click the button and the page reload. What happened? Oh, right. Hashtag I fucked it up. That is what happened. Total shocker. So we hit the button here, and the page refreshes, and there's 74 points, right? So first order of business for us is to like there's some routing that's already taking place here, right? Like we learned last week about forms. You hit the button, and it goes off the server, makes the request to the server. Server does some stuff, and then like sends you off to some place, right? All that's happening. But we want to have that action happen not the standard way. We want to have JavaScript take care of that action for us. Now it's very important, and this is actually very important, that when you're designing things like this, just like out in the world, when you're like adding additional JavaScript to your page, you should always design the page in such a way that it will function with JavaScript turned off. So with it not there at all, right? Like the default functionality should remain. And when we're adding JavaScript to a particular challenge or application, right, like you should do so in such a way that does not break the existing functionality. The fact of the matter is, like, there's tons of internet users out there that roll around all day with just like with JS turned off by default, right? Not to mention like people still using IE7 or whatever, right? Like you have to account for that variable. So rant over on that. In any case, so we should write some JavaScript to intercept. That's what we want to do here is we want to intercept the request. Yeah.
But if you're developing node,
Can you elaborate?
you're writing JavaScript on the back end.
Well, so the back end is not something that the user can turn off, right? Like now you're talking about a server. You're interacting with a server, like of course, it's all JavaScript. You can't really break the default Ruby functionality. You can't like break the default JavaScript functionality by disabling JavaScript. You know what I mean? Okay, great. With AJAX, what we're doing specifically is some event is happening within the DOM, right? And we want JavaScript to see that that event happens and then take some appropriate action. Sometimes we'll want to prevent like its default action. In this case, right, like with a button, it comes with a default action. Other actions might not have a default action, right? Like if we had some like JavaScript that like explodes the picture of the kittens into 1,000 little pieces when you hover over it, right? Like that doesn't have a default action that like only happens in JavaScript land. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So in order to like see the event happen, number one, we have to be able to target it properly. The targeting is like 100%. We're going to do that with jQuery. So we need to be able to say to the page, hey, when I click on this button right here, right, like something needs to happen. So our first order of business is to inspect the element and see if there's some business here that we could hook up with. This button is within a form. It's a button tag with a type of submit. It's got a name, a value, and a bunch of classes: FA sort descending, vote button, and upvote button. The upvote button seems very specific to this thing in particular. And I might like verify that assumption by I'll go down here to the next one and I'll inspect that one and I'll look, and it also has the upvote button. So it seems to me that upvote button is a unique class on these buttons that doesn't occur with any other like code within our application.
What about vote button?
Yeah, vote button. I don't know, right? Like I don't know, maybe. Sure. If we really want to be sure, we'd come over here and we'd Command Shift F and we'd be like, vote button, and we see where this occurs. Okay, app underscore post dot oh damn it, Hunter. RM app views underscore post. There we go. Gone. So disregard that one. We'll get to it. But it does occur here in index, and it occurs in the CSS. And that's it. So it looks like it does only occur, both the vote button and the upvote button both only occur within this like article iteration happening here. So we could hook up to either one. In this case, like there's some unique class or ID that we could hook up with and like place our event listener on already in the markup. If there weren't, like you certainly are empowered to like take it upon yourself, right? To add something in. You know what I mean? Does that statement make sense to everybody? Okay, great. So let's say var. This is what up vote button listener equals a function which takes no inputs, and inside the function we need to target that thing. So we'll do so with string dot upvote button. There we go. And I like the dot on pattern, so I don't use like dot click or dot submit or anything like that. I do dot on, and then the type of event right here. So on click, we'll say.
Why do you prefer on versus click?
Oh, let's talk about it. Lot of complicated reasons. Okay, great. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into complicated reasons. I want to get through like basic pattern and workflow. So what do we got here? We've got jQuery select everything on the page that has a class of upvote button. And then for each one of those things, because this returns us what looks like an array, but it's not, it's called a node list. It's kind of the same thing as like the collection proxy in Active Record, right? Like it's kind of like an array, but not an array, you know what But whatever, this collection of things which is returned from jQuery here, attached to that on click some function which will run. Now, first order of business for me is, because I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not sure if this is going to work out, so like I'm going to establish that like shit is working out thus far. And I'm going to do so by console logging in the name of this method right there. So now when I come back out, I go to my console, I refresh the page, really? Right, okay. Okay, so when I hit the button, there's maybe, I don't know, maybe something? Oh, I got to prevent default, right. So this callback function here, and this is what this is, it's a callback function. No one's going to ask me what a callback function is? Great, thanks. A callback function is some function which is run like at a particular point in time. You had them in Active Record as well, right? Active Record callbacks, like before save, before validation, stuff like that. Same kind of similar concept here in that JavaScript, like you can define a function, a callback function, which is just like some function which executes whenever like X happens, right? So in this case, we're putting this on listener, on click of everything that has a class of upvote button. And whenever one of those things is clicked, then this function, this callback function is the thing which is fired. Right? Callbacks are extremely versatile, and they make JavaScript a really powerful language because you can like pass a callback into another function as an argument. You can like, right? We can pass functions as arguments in JavaScript. So that like then that like encapsulating function, like whenever something happens and it needs to do some other functionality, then it fires that callback. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, great. The callback function takes in an argument, and that argument is the event which happened, right? Okay. So inside here, we need to, on that event, we need to tell the browser, hey, whatever it was that you thought you were doing with that form, maybe not. I know better because I'm JavaScript or something. So event prevent default here should, if this listener is working correctly, which it's not, should stop the page from posting in to the place it was planning on going with its default behavior. Can anyone tell me why this isn't working? No.
Oh, yeah.
What? Holy shit, you're right. Yeah, for sure. So I broke this logic out down here into its own function, right? Because I believe that this is much cleaner than writing a bunch of functions within document ready, which just means that I need to call it and invoke it. Now we're good to go. Now when I hit it, I get my end upvote button listener, and the page didn't go anywhere, right? I can click this little puppy till I'm blue in the face, and I get nothing. Cool? Great. So we've established that our listener is functional. That's a great first step. Now we need to replace the functionality that was happening by default, which was what? Right? If we go back to index.arb and we take a look, form method post action goes to /post at a particular ID /vote. So this form contains the information that I need in order to figure out what the default functionality was. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I can get it out of here. Does anyone have a suggestion for me as to how I might go about doing that? Sure. Okay. So yeah, what we want to do here, let me segue for a moment. what we're doing inside this upvote listener button is the following. Just to give ourselves like some loose pseudocode to file, we're going to gather up our input. Then we're going to, whatever, fucker. We're going to make a request. Then we're going to alter the page accordingly with resulting data of request. So that's what we're doing, right? The first part is gathering the input. We're going to use jQuery to gather the input. The input that we need is the data which is contained within this form. So if I made like a var, form action here, because I need what? I need form action and I need form method. Probably are the two things that I need, right? A valid route is methods and actions. So this one I'll comment out. Form action could be something like jQuery this. Have we seen this yet? Great. This describes the current context of where this line of code is being executed. So for us, if we just came down here and console logged form action in this case, and it shows us that, well, it returns to us a node list, but inside that node list, the first and only element is, yeah, it's this button. The button where the event occurred is the current context of this event listener that we wrote. Well, that's extremely useful to us because like we're already on the page, like at the spot where like shit's going down, you know? So from here we can just like traverse from that local spot to where we need to go in order to take or gather some action. So I might, now what I'm going to do is I'm console logging out this thing, and I'm just going to like keep modifying this bit up here until I get where I want to go, right? So like it's part, what? It's one level up, so we'll say this dot parent, hit it. Okay, now I've got like I've got the form which contains this button, and that form, it totally has the thing we're looking for. All dot action, like this.
Oh no, it's saying the action.
Right here? Yeah, we could take that. Ah. Wait a minute. Oh, I didn't refresh, my bad. Nope, action's not a function. Dot adder,
Yeah.
and then action. Sure. Sweet, so like a legit address here. That's the place we want to go. Awesome. So form action here is all set. Now, oh no. Now we can like duplicate that, and this one for form method will be like same, but just method, right? We could take a moment and confirm that if we want. Post. So these are the two elements that I really needed off the page in order to have like a valid route to go off to server land and say, hey server, you know, do some stuff. One further thing here, I'm going to set a third variable up here called form target. And it'll be equal to jQuery this. I'm giving myself this variable form target so that I have a reference to the current context of what's happening at this exact moment in time. And then like I could, you know, if I was building this out originally, I probably would have made like form, right, like just hooked up to these off of that variable just for like cleanliness. So now, like, I'll be able to use this form target later in order to come back and say, what button was it that I was clicking on again? Right? Oh, it was that one, for sure. You know?
So there must be an advantage of selecting, I mean, using this dot parent rather than targeting another specific name.
Because I wrote it? Why? Why do you say
I
there
don't
must be an
know.
advantage?
I'm not sure.
Ah, there's 1,000 ways to go from the current context, this, up to, or around wherever to like get ultimately to that action which is on this line right here. And probably not 1,000 ways. Let's say there's probably like 20 ways. There's a lot of ways, right? It really doesn't matter. You will get better over time at traversing the DOM and using more and more advanced jQuery selectors, which are all just CSS selectors, right? And as you get better with those things, right, like these variable assignments will become shorter. I imagine probably for the challenges coming up over the next couple of days that like they'll be like really long, right? Like you probably have something like dot parent dot children, that's an li dot sibling, that's a ul or some or some such, right? Like a lot of traversal happening. And the fact is, I don't care. I don't care if like your variable assignment to get to the place you want to go is 20 characters long or 200 characters long. You will get better at traversing the DOM with practice.
But do you always need to go from these and traverse, or can you target directly where you need to go?
So I mean, that is very dependent upon your situation, right? So in this case, we're in the middle of an iteration, right? So there's lots of identical elements on the page. They're all composed exactly the same way. So you would definitively want to go from this in this case. If you had a page where everything sort of is its own deal, and you could just like put an ID on an element and say, that's the make a new tree button. There's only one make a new tree button on the entire page. We're looking at that make a new tree button, and then we're going to like do some stuff with it. In that case, you really don't need the current context, right? Because you can just write like your hookup to the make a new tree button, which is always going to be like at the same place, doing the same thing. There's never going to be another one. You know what I mean? That said, even in that case, you would still benefit from using a pattern like this, because it just it's simple and straightforward and extensible down the road. Is my opinion. Okay, great. So we gathered some input: form target, form action, form method. Now it's time to like make our AJAX request. I'm going to set my AJAX request equal to a variable called request. And this is .ajax. Take some input, and that input is a hash. And that hash takes some keys and values, right? It's an options hash. You will see options hashes all over the place. So some of the things I need to tell it is like the URL, the action, where I'm going. So I'll pass to that form action. And it's a post. AJAX defaults to get. So if you did not pass a type here, it would go in as a get request. We want it to be a post, so we'll tell it form method, right?
Same with method and type.
Type and method are technically aliases of one another, but type is nicer to you in legacy jQuery environments. I prefer type for that reason.
How so?
Method will not always work out. Method will not always give you the correct value, but type will. But technically, according to the documentation, they're interchangeable. Okay. So here we're making our request. Let's see that happen. So we refresh the page and we hit the button, and some stuff happened over here. There was a post that happened here. We can K this out so we can. Okay, there was a post that happened, and then a redirect to get /post. So what's happening here is, as soon as we've made this request, we're effectively leaving JavaScript land, right? Like we're sending a request off from JavaScript land to Ruby land. So we're over here in this controller, and we're coming into this route, post ID vote. If we weren't sure if we were making it into this route or not, we could totally like give ourselves some sort of a signal. I'm sorry? I haven't run the request? What do you mean? So you can store functions in variables in JavaScript. That doesn't mean that you're not running them. The request is executed at the instance it's declared because it's invoked, right? $.ajax invoked. So it's executed right there, bing bing, right? It happens that when I set variable request equal to this method or this function which is being invoked, variable request is ultimately equal to the return value of that function. Does that make sense? The reason it is being called is because it has parentheses at the end of it. Yeah. So like if we wanted to set it just to the function itself without calling it, then we would do this, right? And then the variable request in this case would be equal to the body of the function, not the function as it is executed. Cool. And yeah.
Long form AJAX request versus .push.
.push. .post.
Post.
.post.get. Yeah, sure. As you get more proficient with AJAX down the road, just shorten them up and go with .post.get. Right now, write .ajax. So you're like very familiar with the pattern. Cool. Easy peasy.
.post and .get.
Yeah, you can take out a lot of the additional parameters by like using a different AJAX method. I wouldn't worry about it. I'd just roll on the AJAX. Whatevs. As a matter of fact, for me personally, when I'm writing code, I don't ever use .get and .post. I always use this exact same pattern. It's the way I learned it here. It's the way I write it. Period, hands down. 10 projects out of 10. Var request equals $.ajax. Old habits. We determined that these stars printed out, right, and our params came in, so we determined that like we are in fact in this route. So the request is getting us here, and the votes are being created, and then it's redirecting us to all the posts. This route, in much the same way that like on the front end, we tell our JavaScript function to not implement to not implement the default functionality of the things on the page, right? Like the form. In the same way, we need to tell our server to not take its default functionality in regards to like handling this AJAX request. As the server is currently written, right? Like it fires, it finds a post, it creates a vote, it redirects to post. Great. We want it to take some other action if it is an AJAX request. So we say very easily here, if request.xhr, then do some stuff. Else, which is to say, if it is not an XHR request, then proceed on about your business the way you were before. But if it is an XHR request, I want you to do something different. And here is a place where we could go a lot of different directions, right? We could say like we could hand back a partial HTML, or we could hand back some like very specific data, or we could like just hand back like a string. It says like I did it, or yay or whatever, right? But the moral here is that like the code on line 17 would only run when the request, right? Request is a method that you have inside Sinatra, and when that request responds to .xhr. XHR, if you're wondering, can't believe you're not, huh?
It's AJAX, right? Is that what it means?
XML.
That whole long thing.
Request, right? Yeah, that whole big long thing. Sure. The underlying technology in JavaScript, which enables you to make AJAX requests, because remembering that jQuery is just a JavaScript library, right? So it's just a collection of JavaScript made into handy-dandy methods, which are easy to use than standard JavaScript. If the name of the module which like makes that functionality possible is the XHR module, right? So that's why here in our Sinatra land we say if request XHR, not if request.ajax. Okay, great. You cannot, Dave discovered this earlier, right? You can't just straight up like return a number here, right? Like if you said post.votes, Sinatra's going to yell at you because if you try to return an integer out of a controller function, it's going to interpret that integer as a status, and it won't let you do that. Yeah, so you just need to convert that integer to something else. It could be like to a string, or better yet, to JSON. Now, well, before we write anything else, let's.
Why would you use JSON in this situation versus a partial?
What's that?
Why would you use JSON in this situation versus a partial?
You use whatever data type is most accommodating to your needs.
And how did you know that JSON was most accommodating to our needs now?
I didn't. I just picked one.
Cool.
Okay. So when we hit the button, we got our stars here, and we got our post to this thing, but the redirect no longer happens. The redirect no longer happens because like now we're just telling it this value, and this else block never runs. Everybody with me on why we do the if block here and like how that works? Great. Once the server route completes, and however it completes, right? Once it completes, you're going to head back to JavaScript land. So you essentially arrive like right here on line 24. And at this point, we'll use another callback function to trigger some event. Right? Callback functions, just to touch on them again, are very important in JavaScript because of JavaScript's asynchronous nature. So if I like wrote some like var, thingy equals func that I wanted to do here, and we're making this request up here, right? This function will execute before this request finishes, right? Like in Ruby, line 17 doesn't execute until line 16 is done. In JavaScript, line 19 executes, 20 executes, 21 executes, 22 executes, 24 executes, and like line 19 just now sent off this request to the server. The server's doing stuff. It's going to be like a couple hundred milliseconds before this finishes. Doesn't matter. The rest of this has already like kicked off and gone. It's not waiting, right? So it's because of that asynchronous nature that callbacks are so important to us. So on our request variable that we made up here, we can invoke the callback.done. This is a callback function which is executed when the AJAX function is. There you go. So .done equals a function, and that function needs to take an input. Its input will be the thing that it got back. So like response data or something like that. Data. There we go. And the very first thing we want to do is console log that response data.
And in a lot of the documentation, they do that callback function in the request.
Sure. Yeah, this is something you'll just see me do. Most of the documentation out on the internet will have it done like this, where it's chained on to the end of it. It's a method chaining, right? like this method, and then when that method's done, just do this method. I personally prefer it this way because I think it just is cleaner. But that's me, right? Like you all write your code in your own way. Yes.
Could you not put response data in the parameters there and just say like console log this and still give you response data? Like if you just use this inside of that, would it refer to the data?
Yes, I believe so. But there's more up here than just that, just the response data. Has anybody taken a look at what you get back in the dot done? You get back whatever your server sends back, right? Situationally dependent. Well, like the real like asshole answer is you get back a string because everything's a string, right? All right, let's touch on this in 1 second. This response data thing. First, I want to say that like we're not done here with our AJAX request. We wrote a dot done. We need to fill out the functionality of that a bit more. But before we do that, let's take a moment to write our dot fail. And by write our dot fail, I mean copy this dot done and rename it to dot fail. So when you write a dot done, you should really write a dot fail. There are several schools of thought on this out on the internet. Some people will tell you don't need it. I will tell you like, well, but then how will you know when like shit goes haywire? That's typically things I like to know about, like as a developer. You know what I mean? So I'd like console log like, oh no, or something, right? And then again, the data that I got back. Yeah.
Is it possible to combine those two commands, dot done and dot fail? Like do like kind of a at the same time?
Well, hold on. Why would you do that?
In case it does. Oh, you're right. Why would I do that?
Dot done is
When it completes.
when it completed. Shit worked out. It's all good, right? Dot fail is like, listen, we got to talk. Your TPS reports didn't have a cover sheet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Let's. Yes, Una.
If you weren't using requests, how would you append fail?
The exact same way. It's just method chaining. So, like so. Yeah, I just for me, I like look at this and I'm like, there's dots in the middle. There's some stuff, and I have a hard time dealing with non-separated code.
Do you ever use dot always?
I don't. Yeah, you're gonna find a lot of additional patterns that you could apply here. Choose your own adventure, man. Let's take a look at this. So refresh the page. I hit the thing. Oh God. Okay, I got back a bunch of stuff. What did I get back? It's JSON. No, it's JSON representing. What did I ask for? And I got back exactly what I asked for. That's the correct answer. The question is, what did I ask for? So post dot votes. Dot votes returns me what? A collection of active record objects. Right? And then on those objects, I converted them to JSON. And this is what that looks like, right? Like it's just, you know, whatever it is, like 87. Oh, I suppose I could look at the ID. 81, maybe? Yeah, I don't know why they went up to the thousands at this point. That seems weird. Strange active record.
Oh, is it because
Oh, right, because they started one here because this is the first post, but then these down here come on like after the 20th post or whatever. Yeah, it totally makes sense. In any case, yeah, I don't want this data. What I actually am looking for is an integer which represents the total number of votes. So I could just like dot count here, and then JSON that thing. And now it returns me just a straight up integer. Sweet, super awesome. So I want to take my straight up integer and I want to append it to the page. Now if I hadn't made this variable form target earlier, this could be a real pain in the ass. Because if we come in here and we console.log this, What do we got? It's not the button from before. Yeah. It's the XHR like response object, which contains some data that we could go and like dig through and figure out something, like follow the breadcrumbs home, or we could have like set our context, setting scope, and just to like touch extremely briefly on what Caden asked about earlier with closures in JavaScript. A closure in JavaScript, this is a word that you should get a real firm handle on before you enter the job market, and we can talk about it more in depth later. But like the quick and dirty is you're setting a scope within a function, and you're wrapping that scope within a function to preserve it, right? So that function within the scope like stays, or the scope within the function, damn it, stays legit. Even as like the rest of the scope throughout your application is changing. Does that make sense? Sort of? Yeah. Read around.
What happened there with this?
Yeah, we're still within. So that's not necessarily closures, but more like scope. Like the scope is we're within this upvote listener function, and then we're within the scope of the callback function for this click event, and that's where all this is happening, right? But then within the request, we're in a callback function which happens when the .done is triggered, right? So like this is, scope within this function, within this function, within this function, right? We want the scope from the second level function, not the third level function down. That's the scope that we want to, or the context rather, that we want to hook up with. So by setting this variable here, we've given ourselves a nice pointer to that. You'll see this pattern referenced a lot on the internet as potentially other things. You'll see it as that, underscore this, right? Things of that nature. This equals that is a real popular one. The underscore this seems like it used to be popular, but it's definitely faded away. Don't do either of those.
Why?
Okay, sure. So I have 3,700 lines of JavaScript written, and I see a variable called that. The fuck that are you talking about? I don't know. What the hell is that? But, and form target, is not much better, but it's better. It's at least a little informative. I would argue that the more informative you can make your variable names, the better. For me, form target is a pattern that I follow personally, so that like whenever I see element target in my code, right, like I know that that's a reference to a previous context because that's the pattern that I follow, right? You will establish and follow your own patterns and like give yourself your own little clues as to these things, right? What's that? God damn it. I want to go to a staff meeting.
This is very important, and this is our breakout time. I think that that's a good reason to skip a staff meeting.
So, let's just finish this out really quickly. So we've got our form target here, and we can say form target was what?
It was the button. The button.
Yeah, this button, and then so from the button, let's inspect the element. We need to go from the button to the place where the information is held. So the button has some siblings, one of which is a p tag.
It doesn't have siblings.
It doesn't have
The
siblings.
parent has siblings.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're saying I need to go. Let's do this. Let's say var, just like target straight up equals form target dot parent. Is what you're saying?
Got siblings with a P.
So, okay, I got the form. Awesome. And then from the form, I need to go.
Siblings.
Up here.
Yes.
Okay.
Siblings with a P.
It has class.
And then you want to get to its children that has a class of points.
Fuck you all.
Not parent, no.
How about that? That works, right? Totally does. Great. Hence the point of like, I don't care how you get there. Many ways to traverse the DOM. I just care that you get there. And you like, you hook up with the element that you want. So then like this target now, we'll say like target dot what like or value, whatever. Sure. Target dot text will be like the data that we got back. Okay, so now I hit the button and it updates automatically. MVP achieved. Okay, before we close out here, I want to touch on some important things. There's a keyword in JavaScript called arguments. Anybody know what it does? So the same way that like when you're in your routes over here, what's the first thing we would do when we're debugging a route? Top line of the route, p params, right? Understand what your inputs are. Stop making assumptions about them. Be like, okay, what do I actually have? Seriously, super legit. Same in JavaScript land. If you're having some issues, first rule in debugging here is to come in and like console log like arguments. Maybe not first rule, but certainly a good step. So we'll turn off the other things, and we'll take a look here. And in this case, arguments is an array that contains 3 elements, right? So the first element is what we aliased out to be response data. The second element is a string called success, and the third element is some object. If we want to know what that object is, we'd have to like open this up and go take a look. That object is like the raw XHR request, packaged up and handed back. But these are the 3 inputs that we have. Now, unlike Ruby, JavaScript doesn't give a shit about how many inputs you had versus how many inputs you asked for, right? Like you could be passing a function 37,000 inputs, and if you only write one like input here on line 24, then like you're only looking for the very first input out of those 37,000. But they do come in order, right? So like this could be like status code or status message, and it used to be like XHR object, right? Like those are inputs that we have, even if we didn't like go and make use of them. And we've just named the first input response data here because that's what it represents. Cool? Okay. Additionally, you wanted to say like you wanted to change the color of this thing, right? So we can say like target dot add
No, form target.
form target.
It's form target that we want to change colors of, not target. We want to change the button itself. Not
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So form target dot
CSS.
hmm?
Comma.
Here, comma, not colon. Cool. Thanks.
I think that needs to be a string. Yeah, it needs to be a string color.
Sweet. Okay.
Yay.
What about partial?
Sure. Let's say that let's say we decided to go El Distracto, Mr. Roboto on this deal up here, and instead of handing back some JSON that represented this point value, which is clean and simple, I wanted to replace the entire div. So let's come out to so let's see, we've got this post right? This entire div here. So I'm going to take this entire div, I'm going to make a partial out of it so that I can consume it in my AJAX. So I'll go to views, and I'll make a new file called underscore post.erb. The only difference between a partial and a regular view file is just that it's like rendered within another view file, right? Or in the case of AJAX, that we can like take it and have like just the one little piece of the puzzle that we want and like make use of it. So here's our article partial, and because I cut it out of this index now, I need to replace it with a call here in the index to the partial. So I'll say print ERB to post. Now, when you're calling a partial view from within a view or from within your controller, it's important that you pass it a couple, or at least one option. And that option is layout false. So you got this file in your views called layout, right? Which has this yield block down here. Every ERB template, right, like it's compiled and it's placed right here. And then the layout is compiled, and ultimately like it's the template plus this layout page which is handed back. So every time you like ask ERB to go and like fix up some template that you give it, you're getting back this page as well, right? Which is really nice for us because like it means that we don't have to include CSS and JavaScript on every page, right? Like we just include it in one place and then all the pages subsequently will have it. But when we're running partials, we don't want this code to be compiled because it's already on the page. It already exists. We don't want to add it twice. Especially like this could be super bad news bears if we had a bunch of JavaScript that was executing on page load, right? Because like now you're like handing back more executable code into the environment. It's probably going to cause some errant stuff to happen. So the moral of the story is we want to turn this layout.erb file off, right? And this is how you do it, right? Like easy peasy, layout false, all good. Additionally, the ERB method always consumes instance variables, right? Are we good with that? The ERB method like looks up in its current scope to find instance variables which are in that scope, and then it sends those instance variables off to the template which you asked it to do, and then they'll be available to that template. Unfortunately, this template does not look for, right? Because we were inside of an iteration here, we'd already given ourselves a local block param of post, right? So this partial is not looking to consume an instance variable. It's looking to consume a local variable. Well, local variables aren't compiled by ERB. So we need to send it the local variable in this case. And we do so with an additional option called locals. Can't make this shit up. So locals, it's called the locals hash, and it's called a locals hash because it's a hash. And then within this hash, any key will represent the local variable which you will have access to within the partial, right? So in this case, I need it to be post because that's what it's looking for here, right? Post, local post. And in this case, and the key post then in this case also corresponds to the value, which is the value from the current scope. So this could be like a class variable or a local variable or like a jibjabs, whatever, right? In this case, the thing which we were passing in is the local block param post. So now this partial is legit. When we refresh the page, like just the fact that it rendered means that this partial was legit. And since we've broken this out to a partial code now, we can use that in our AJAX request. So back over here to the server, here we said if the post or if the request coming in is an XHR request, then we like take that vote count and we convert it to JSON, and that's what we send back because we're going to be like very microscopic and just change the one little piece that we need in order to display to the user that this worked out. But for super hypotheticals, we'll say that like that that wasn't what we needed to do, and instead we wanted to update the DOM with the entirety of this post after we changed it, right? So here we run the same method that we were just running out in the view. We see ARB to underscore post layout false locals. And here again, it's also post, conveniently enough. Right? So now, back in our application JS, when we console log response data, we turn these things off. Right? Also arguments. The thing which we're actually getting back now is this HTML, right? That represents our partial. So, cool? We all good with that? Now, if we just to demonstrate the point here, number one, if we didn't pass locals, we get a 500 internal server error, and it's going to say undefined local variable or method post, right? Because we didn't give it the thing that it needed to compile. Okay, if we change that, put the locals back in, say if we didn't pass the layout false, then the thing that we're going to get back is it's HTML again, right? But it's all the HTML, the whole layout. If this challenge, the layout file is like fairly tame. When you get into larger applications, right? Like that fucker could be like 600 lines long or something. You would notice. So and a good indicator there is, right, like you can see doc type and HTML declared right up here at the top. You're like, oh, all right, I forgot to turn layout off. But with layout off and passing it the proper variable that it's looking for, we get back just like this very clean little snippet of code, which now we can go off and place into the DOM. An excellent example of when you might actually use this is if you wanted a form. In fact, later in this challenge, I think you probably need to do something with this form down here, or like say if we had like a button that was like, you know, make new post. When you hit the make new post button, maybe it like goes off and gets the form partial, and it comes back and like puts that form partial on the page. You're like, here you go, human. Here's a form for you to like put some shit in, right? This is not a quality use of partials. Totally should have gone with the JSON, but you can learn something from it. So here are what do we have? The form target. The form target represented. Damn it. Yeah, the button which we clicked. Yeah. And now our HTML partial that we generated represents what? The entire article. So if we wanted to replace that entire article, we need to do some, again, do some traversal. So we need to go up one level, up another level, and what? Then, so, okay, we could try that. So let's say form target dot parent dot replace.
Oh no.
Nope, replace not a function.
What about text?
Text?
Text
This is HTML, buddy.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a suggestion? Find.
What about .html?
.html, we can totally try that. Okay, something happened. but it's all wonky. So
Oh, we have to go to
right, so now this thing has the thing inside of it, but also the other thing. So like within this article ID 1 is another article of ID of 1, right? So let's go to the documentation and take a look. Say jQuery replace. I don't want string replace. I want like HTML replace, right? Ooh, replace with could be legit. Everybody read this? Replace with some HTML. Seems like maybe a thing. Let's try it. Ah. Oh God. Okay, it works the first time, but then it doesn't work after that. Refresh, right? Does anyone know why it works the first time and doesn't work after that? It only works once. So what we're doing now is we're replacing the entire article with some HTML partial that we made.
They don't have the same like class and IDs.
They do. They're exactly the same. You're no longer listening to it. You set an event listener on all the shit that was on the page when you first started, and then you just replace something with something new. The new thing doesn't have that event listener, so it's over there like, you know, yeah, I'll submit all the things, sure. The answer to this problem is something called event delegated listeners. An event delegated listener is one which is dynamic and allows us to like listen to a specific kind of element regardless of when it was placed on the page. And to do so, we need to modify this line 9 of code. So in a standard event listener, right, like you use a jQuery lookup. This jQuery lookup fires when this function is run, which is when the document is ready. All clear? Yeah? So upvote button fires when the thing is run, and everything which is on the page when the document is ready gets this on click handler bound to it. A delegated event pattern is one in which you don't query the specific thing that you're looking for, but rather you query some parent element of it. In the most extreme case, like a parent element like this, don't do that. Again, with the previous like theme, you want to be as precise as possible, always. So you want to like come out. If we came back to the DOM and we right click and we inspect again, we want to attach to the nearest static parent element, the nearest thing on the page which is there when the page loads and isn't going to be updated or changed. Right? So from this button, the form, well, that's going to be replaced in just a minute, so that's not static. The article, that's going to be replaced in a minute, that's not static. What about the div class post container? That's not going to be replaced. That's totally on the page when the page is loaded. So that is the nearest parent element, which is static. So class post container. So we'll change this listener to be class post container. Okay, post container on click. Now, just making this change doesn't make it dynamic. In fact, it breaks everything. Apparently, all the things. A delegated pattern is one, delegated event listener pattern is one in which, so you're listening to this parent element, right? But at the time that the event happens, you're going to check to see if the event is of a certain type, right? So you're delegating the check around the type of event until the time that the event occurs. Does that make sense? Okay. So this listener right here is established when the document is ready, right? But this function doesn't run until that event happens, right? So in this case, a click on the post container. We want to add an additional element. We want to add an additional check before this callback function, and that will be the thing which we're actually wanting to listen for. In this case, upvote button. So when the document's ready, we look up and we find everything on the page. It's a post container, and then all that stuff we place on it an event handler for click functionality. And whenever anything in the post container is clicked, it's going to attempt to run this callback function, right? But because of this additional argument here, that's why they use the keyword attempt. Because of this additional argument, it is going to check at the time of the event, not on document load, but at the time that the event occurs. It's going to check and say, hey, shit, that's happening. Do you have a class of the vote button? Oh, sweet, you do, right? And it's that like checking at the time of the event execution that makes the entire pattern dynamic. Because what has to happen is that it repolls the DOM and it sees the new content which has been added since the page was initially loaded. Does that make sense? Sweet. So let's give this a shot. We'll refresh. And now when we like hit this, okay, it went up to 105 and 106, and 107, 108. Right? Now it's all good. And we could probably I don't think we can just turn this back. I don't think that'll work. Nope, doesn't work. Because it's modifying the CSS of the element that was there, not the element that is there now. You know what I mean? So we'd have to like dive into this response data and like change the element, the CSS to it to red. Okay, cool. We could also probably just, this is going to change all the text to red, right? No, still nothing. Whatever, don't care. So that's a way that you can like replace with a partial on the page. Should you use partials? Should you use JSON? I don't know. You should use whatever you want to use. You should use the thing which is best in the situation that you need. If you have a lot of HTML to replace, so like in the example of like a form, you know, yeah, probably seems way better to use a partial. You just like hand all that HTML out. It's all pre-formatted. It's all ready to go. You wrote it up ERB. It's very easy. You just like hand all of it out and say, here you go, AJAX. Here's some HTML, and it puts it right on the page. Good to go. In this example here with the points, right? Like this is a very small data point. We really don't need to compile a bunch of HTML in order to like modify this one little data point. Like we really only need the integer value. It's a very small section of data. So maybe JSON is a better bet for us here, or we could have just passed it as a string, right? Which is not to say that like you use HTML when it's large and JSON when it's big. That's totally not to say that. Like you're going to run into tons of situations where you'll be passing around giant JSON objects, and then like you build things out on the JavaScript and based on like iterating over that JSON object. So whatever data you feel is best for your situation, that's what you should be using. I realize that's not a great answer. Other questions? Yes?
How do we make it so the things are only be uploaded one time? Like so that if they try to click on it after the first one, it doesn't keep going up?
Several ways we could do that. So like if you required a user to be logged in, then you could do something like checking if the user's votes include a vote on this post. In which that seems more real world. There we go. That seems more real world to me. Is like because you probably would enforce them to be logged in before you allow them to vote, right? So in which case you probably have a votes table between users and posts, right? And you could like check for an entry on said votes table on that join to see if there's already an entry that has the user's ID and this post ID. That said, in this situation, it seems to me. So I'm gonna go back to the functionality we had before, the legit shit.
You have a points method that doesn't count.
Cool. This works, right? All right. And we turn this off and this off and this off. Wait a minute. Turn this off and this off and this off. We turn this on. And functionality is restored, right? Great. Functionality is indeed restored, except the fucking points aren't going up. What do I need to do? It's target dot val, or what is it? Target dot text. Response data. Sweet. Wait. Okay, cool. And add my semicolons. Great. So in order to handle the click event in this challenge, the way I would do it would be as such. I'd have a conditional up here at the top. And I would say, or not here, but rather up in the top of this click handler. And I'd say like if, maybe we pull this up to there. And if form target dot dot CSS, you know what I mean, is red or something. Yeah, probably. I don't know. Let's go take a look. Determine if CSS has a, so if this thing CSS display block equal true, return true. And they say if, meh, aha, looky there, great. So you pull this out, boom, and then, no. Okay, then it's return, alert, something like that. Let's give it a shot. Okay, there's one. Oh no, that didn't work. It didn't work at all. Okay, hold on. So let's tell you what. Let's put in a debugger right here. Right? We all know about debugger. Yes, no. Debugger is a breakpoint debugger for JavaScript. The same way you have like pry by bug or binding.pry or whatever in Rubyland, you've got debugger in JavaScript. It is not as trustworthy as your pry by bug in Rubyland. There will be instances where you put in a debugger and you say like console log form target, it's like form target's undefined. And you're like, motherfucker, it's right there. I defined it literally on the line above you. It's like, no, I've never heard of him. Nobody here by that name. So the moral of the story is, right, like, if you run into a situation like that, remember that I told you this, and instead of like doubting yourself and your worth as a human being, maybe you just like come in and you console log the thing instead of like trying to look it up in debugger, and like this will be true. You know what I mean? Hopefully that didn't confuse anyone.
No need for loading or requiring JavaScript. There's no requirement.
No requirement here.
Already loaded.
Right, it's already in there. It's ready to go all the time. So we put in our debugger, we hit the button, boom, debugger. So this drops us in to the current scope and context of our JavaScript function. So if we said this here, right, then the scope is right there where it was. So in this case, form target represents this. And, well, we need to go forward one. Now we do it again. And let's say form target.css invoked doesn't give me anything. Form CSS dot color comes back to this value.
So why not set
Hmm?
your boolean, why not set it equal to that? Can you check it? Can you do it that way?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that we're hooked up to the right thing. You know what I mean? Form target is this button. Oh, look down here. It has a style
What about if we did
where
it,
color equals red. So I wonder if I could. I'm sorry.
if you do adder and style? No, adder and then
Like this,
there you go.
and then set it to this value.
Boolean is against that.
So we went off into debugger land and we like tried a bunch of shit until we figured out the thing that we actually wanted to work. And then we take that thing and we pull it back into our like code that we're going to deploy. So if form target adder style color red semicolon, then alert return fuck off troll, and remove the debugger. Okay, we clicked it once, it didn't happen, clicked it twice,
Yeah.
and now we've prevented that functionality. Cool? There are definitively better ways to do this. You remember like when we were having the conversation last week about like validations, right? Like if this was your only validation and I was seriously interested in trolling you, I'd just go turn off my JavaScript and be like, fuck you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Yes, Todd.
Well, the only other thing though is you weren't actually preventing the action. If you look when you refresh your page, your vote counts to go up. Refresh the page.
Yeah. Oh, it sure did. What's up with that? Because okay, cool. How's this? Now we are, right? If this thing is like this, then I guess it's not returning, right? Because where is it returning to? The rest of it's still running. So just like alert them. Else, which is to say that this if conditional was not satisfied, right? Then do the thing. So now 132, 133, nope, 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 nope. Refresh.
Did you reload the page?
Good call. Nice.
What happened?
I can't believe I totally missed that. You're 100% right. The prevent default is, since it's happening within the conditional, like we're no longer preventing the default behavior of this form. So behind the scenes, that form is like bing, 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 bing. It's like hitting that server hard. So I think the moral of the story here is that really, anytime you're inside an event listener, the prevent default should probably be the very first line within it, right? Any action that you take subsequently should be just that, subsequent to the prevention of the default like deal. So maybe it's a prevent default first, and then like my debugging console log here, and then you start with like variable assignment shit like that. All right, now 138, 139. I'm sort of interested though if I remove this and this and put back in my return statement. Ah! Does that work out? 139, 140. Still good. So the return statement like does work as I originally thought it would. That said, probably better that with the thing that we noticed with the else statement. Seems more explicit. Seems easier to follow, right? If this condition exists, then you run this block of code. If this other condition exists, then you run this other block of code. And actually, it would really behoove us to like break both of these things out now into their own functions. Like once you start introducing conditional logic, seems like probably a good time to start breaking out into subfunctions, right? So this one would be like, we might rewrite this as something like this, where it's like, tell trolls, fucks off, right? In that case, and then this one, would be some like submit upvote. It's this function, right? Where then like we'd have these trules. We'd have these two functions like defined somewhere else then. The submit upvote would probably pass it the current context that we were wanting to make use of. Right? Yeah, because now within the scope of this function, now we'll have access to the scope of this context which we set within this closure. That's correct. Todd?
I was just thinking, would it not just be easier to add the attribute disable to the button?
Sure. You can totally do that too. As with all things, you're going to find there's 100,000 ways to do it. There's no right way. There are ways that will seem much more shitty to you. And there are ways that will seem much more awesome to you. And it's up to you to like figure that out. Okay? Jess, you look disappointed. Okay. Any other questions? Seriously? All right, great. Mahalo.